back for the second now live past life enthusiast group Facebook video. And as promised, it looks like we'll be regularly doing these on Thursday at 12:30. And if that doesn't suit you, remember, of course, these are replayed. And at any time, you can email us your questions, or you can just send, add a little comment to the field in order to indicate that you would like a question to be answered during these sessions. So if you are online, if you do happen to be joining us, do make sure that you send a little message just to say, hi, I've joined you. I'd really appreciate a little bit of feedback. Of course, you know, the beautiful thing about spirit work that we've noticed, and you'll see this in mediumship and when I'm reading for people, actually, if the recipient is very dull and very closed and is not really engaged at all, the reading is really difficult to deliver because the energy is not supportive of the information getting through. So the idea is that the more of you that watch these videos and the more of you that participate in these videos by just jumping on and saying hi, it really helps us out, it really helps these things grow. So don't be afraid. If you do happen to jump online, do just say hello. Otherwise, we're just going to continue these because Spirit really does want us to have this conversation. And in fact, the reason why I started this group in the first place was because we do want to expand the conversation around past lives, the conversation around regression and reincarnation, just so that we make it more accessible to other people, so that you can maybe understand some of the stuff that's going on with you. So if you're having spontaneous dreams, if you're finding you're walking down the street and you're having kind of these interactions with people, and they just feel meaningful and you're not really quite sure why they feel so meaningful because they may be very insignificant, then these may be indicative of a past life connection. And sometimes when we understand why, it really does help us to understand what we can do about it and what our power is in the situation. We already know that we only get access to the past lives that are relevant to us and they're given to us at exactly the time that we need them. Not all souls experience reincarnation, although I already know that if you've been signed to this group and if you are listening to these videos, it's already an indication that you either already experience spontaneous past life recall, or that you'll further develop some of your soul strength through past life regression. So don't be afraid. As I said, if you're jumping on to check out, just give us a yell, just say hi. Really be nice to get some feedback from you guys. Cool. So continuing on, you know, we are all here for soul's expansion. That's one thing that's really true. You know, as a soul, we are all here to learn through the lessons. And last week we were talking about the school. We were talking about how being in a physical body is the school of life. And in that, this is also another forum for us to delve into that school of life. So also, another thing about this group that I'm really urging you and really encouraging, like I was saying before, you know, your enthusiasm for the group really then allows us to reach higher potential. It really allows us as a collective to get more information from Spirit and to get more Spirit backing as to how to unravel some of these things. So do feel free to share your stories on this Facebook group. I do encourage you to do that. If you've got any questions or feelings around past life or regression or reincarnation or things like soulmates or how the soul fields work and how the viewing rooms work up in the between life space work, then this is the forum for you to ask those questions, and we'll attend to those, of course, in this open forum. You're also welcome to share any article that you might come across that talks about past lives, and across this I've written a couple of articles myself and about past life regression that you might be interested in, so feel free to check that out. Cool. So I will today, of course, do my best to continue to answer some of the questions that many of you have, and we'll continue to do this through the live Facebook groups. And as a professional soul coach and spirit channel, this is really delivered not just via me, but also via my spirit guides and also the ascended beings that like to pop in and share with you some of the knowledge. In fact, interestingly enough, when you listen up, sometimes your spirit guides make an appearance and work through me as well, because they're eager to use me as a channel, as an open gateway, if you will, to get you actual physical messages. So do consider hooking in and checking this stuff out. If the time doesn't suit you and you really like to be a part of the online forum, then again, just post, comment, let me know what's going on, and we'll see whether or not we can actually get this on a different time slot. That's also something that's available. So if you just jumped online, just write down to say hello that you're online. That'd be really awesome. Today we're going to focus on a conversation around soulmates. And the reason why we need to talk about soulmates is because there's a lot of misconception in understanding what soulmates are, why they come into our lives, who they are. You know, there are some people who don't believe in soulmates, and that's obviously your choice as an individual human being to be in the decision space of understanding how you view your own world. This is really important. Hi, Beth. Thank you for saying hello. Really welcome to the show. And so being a soulmate is evident often in the interactions that we have that are meaningful with other people. There is this belief that if I have a soulmate, we often use the term soulmate to relate to a love interest, and we often use the term soulmate to relate to a love interest that knows who I am and who can see me and hear me and know me and feel me, and who, when I meet them, they're going to make all my wishes come true because they're going to be the ultimate life support, and they're going to be the one being in this whole planet that gets me. And the challenge with that thinking program is that it actually disempowers you as a spirit, as a soul. It really does take away your capacity to own your own life. And when you're in that dynamic, if you're with someone currently and you believe that about them, then you may fall into the habit of believing that this person, putting expectation on that person to fix your life. And so this is actually disempowering. That whole belief system is disempowering. And so as a soul, there's an element of you that sees this as an opportunity to know yourself, because as you start to feed some of the belief systems that don't serve you, that don't actually reflect this inner strength that you have, you start to feel a deficit in your heart. And so if you're with someone and there's a feeling that that person is a soulmate, but you know that the relationship is not serving you, and you know that the relationship is not nurturing you and supporting you, yes, completes you are not so. That's so true. You know, this idea, they're talking about, you know, the movie where they say, you complete me. It's really a very romanticized version of this idea of soulmates. The thing is that if we actually had one person who completes us, and as soon as we meet them, we're perfect and everything is perfect, we actually stop growing as a soul. So there's no opportunity for expansion. So why would we do that? Specifically, if you looked at your own life and you look at how you set goals for yourself, and if you had a goal to be, you know, a top student at something, so say if you were an acupuncture student and you wanted to get top marks, and that is the goal that you had, then essentially as you were training yourself and you watched yourself, you would have put an incredible amount of pressure on yourself to be perfect at what it is that you did. And during that whole period of time, you would have experienced a hell of a lot of stress and a hell of a lot of distress. This idea of competition would have put you in a situation where you would have had to have grown through that. But I can tell you now that once you actually got the marks and you exited the school, if you had achieved that, firstly, you would have experienced pride, you would have experienced a sense of achievement. You may not have, you may have, but chances are what you did is once you met the goal, you forgot about the goal, and then you focused on the next point of competition. And so in a sense, as a soul, I may have spent that whole period of studying to be an acupuncturist, suffering, trying to be the best at what I was, to try to be perfect at the whole thing. And once I got it, I realized that that was just a degree. Yes, the degree might have gotten me a job and shown me that I had some level of certification, but having a job then as an acupuncturist is a different ballgame. So you would have shifted essentially what it is the goal was. And as a soul, you would have been focused then on different things. And so it's kind of like that, where the sense of achievement that we have through suffering is really extraordinary. And so your relationships often are the same. The ones that represent the greatest soul growth and represent your genuine soulmates sometimes can be filled with conflict and sometimes filled with quite a lot of suffering, you know. And soulmates, of course, we're being told, they're tapping me on the head just to say, okay, so this concept of soulmates, they want to take us back a little bit and have a look at this idea of what we call source energy. Yeah. Now we all are energy. first and foremost energy. That we are energy is certain. Yeah, everything is energy. And energy never disappears. It only changes or evolves. And so if you were to look at source energy all the way back eons and eons and eons ago, before we had planet Earth and before we had all of these incarnation structures that we currently have, it would have been one ginormous ball of energy with no interaction with anything to tell it about itself. So source energy needed to differentiate. It needed to create individual aspects of itself in order to investigate the nature of being and the nature of energy. And so from that perspective, we had source energy, and then we had a number of individual souls. And at that point in time, those individual souls differentiated and became individual souls, and they themselves had curiosity. When they had curiosity, they started to explore the universe as it was back then, and there would have been a point where they would have interacted with all of the other individuals that had been created from source energy as a first iteration, and those beings would have been, in a fashion, a type of soulmate, because there would have been some level of destiny or some point of attraction that attracted them into each other's space in order to understand the nature of being. Now, there would have been at some point where those collective of beings would have already explored all aspects in relation to themselves. And in that process, I've already been told by Spirit, and they're telling me again that we need to understand that once we've gone through some of this experience and we've had a bit of experience and we've developed a bit of knowledge, there's a point at which we have more questions than answers. And so from that perspective, sometimes we need more diversity in order to get more answers about different things. Because as we go through life, sometimes we end life with more unresolved than when we started. And so when that happens, there needs to be interaction that allows us to either complete the cycles of those particular aspects of ourselves, or needed to explore further and differentiate even more further into more questions. And so what we're here in the nature of being is to find some answers, but the answers are just to discover ourselves. They're just to discover the nature of energy and the nature of how we are under certain circumstances. We need external impulses or interaction points in order to catalyze the conflicts that need resolving. And this is where we have soulmates. So a soulmate in many ways is often attracted to your dysfunction. A soulmate is often here to catalyze a circumstance that challenges the way you see your space. And so often when we have a soulmate, the soulmate is not necessarily someone who's going to fix me. Yes, sometimes they can provide loving support. And oftentimes a soulmate will incarnate as a family member. Now, I know some of you already feel like there are some family members that you've been born into that you don't belong to. And this means that there are just a number of different types of soulmates. There are a lot of different types of players that are in your environment. Some of your soulmates are a part of your original soul group. They have very similar experiences to you. They've been interacting with you across time and space continuum in various incarnations, and they may have had different relationships to you. So for example, my mother in this life may have been my brother in another life, in a previous life, and in that previous life my brother may have needed to be taken care of. So my mother in this life, in a past life, may have needed to be taken care of, and I may have mothered as a sister my brother, who is my mother, to show her the nature of love and the nature of nurturing and the nature of compassion and caring in a family unit. And so during that period of time, my brother would have had an experience, and during that experience, that person is, of course, that's right, Beth, sorry, I don't always look at the screen. Of course, soulmates don't necessarily have to be a romantic interest, because obviously I'm talking about my mother, who would be my brother in a past life. From that perspective, we may have had something like our parents may not have been around. We may have been abandoned. And so I needed to, as an older sister, look after my mother to make sure that she had all her basic needs met. But in stepping into the space of a sister who is mothering my brother, during that passage of period of time, my brother may have rebelled against me because they had a different view as to what life was like. We may have fought, and we may have created some unresolved conflict between us. And when I have ceased the end of my life, I may have still have some of that unresolved. And so in the next incarnation cycle, I may have had a contract with my mother where we reverse the roles, where she is my mother, but this time she's going to mother a daughter, not being a sister and a brother. And so in that, then we have an opportunity to work through some of our relationship karma to resolve the space. Now, while we're in physical incarnation, while we're actually here, the goal is to rediscover ourselves and rediscover the nature of being. And this is where we often talk about light and love, we often talk about compassion and all of those beautiful, amazing experiences of happiness, joy, love and laughter. When I make choices in my life that are harmonizing my energetic field, that are allowing my energy to find resolution to the conflicts in my life, then what happens is I start to increase my experience of joy and love. And in that, I attract new soulmates to explore the nature of being and explore the nature of love. And sometimes that might mean that in this particular life, if we look at the romantic soulmate, I may have attracted into my life early on when I was quite young, a man who I looked up to because I was quite young and I didn't have a lot of experience in life. And when I had that relationship, I looked up to him almost like a paternal figure that looked after my health and looked after my well-being. And as I was traveling through my experience with him and I started to grow up and I started to get older, I may have evolved so much that I realized that the dynamic of him fathering me in a fashion wasn't something I wanted in a relationship. And so that experience could have been a soulmate relationship. We were attracted to each other to explore and experience together in order to understand the nature of ourselves. Now, there was a lesson for him as well as a lesson for me. Yeah, his lesson might have been that he was treating me like a child. And in that first relationship, I was quite young. He would have treated me like a child, and the type of love may not have suited him. And so from that perspective, the next time he then has another opportunity for a relationship, he may have learned that in order to have a satisfying relationship for himself, he needed to treat his new partner as an equal, giving her a little bit more space to step up. And that was the lesson for him. But of course, after that, I would have gone off into my own space and attracted into my own space my next karmic interaction that allowed me to understand how love works. And so yes, soulmates can be a love mate, but we do not believe that there's only one soulmate in every life. We do not believe that it's only one person that can resolve your troubles your whole life. And this is where I need to then shift into the next belief system, which is this concept of twin flames. A lot of people talk about this idea of twin flames, and there's been some massaging of this concept over a period of time. Of course, at the moment, some people believe this concept of twin flames basically means that we had one energy once, that we had one soul energy, and as we split into two, a masculine form and a feminine form, but exactly the same energy. And as we started to incarnate, we started to have our life experience. And then when we start to near the end of our incarnation cycle or the end of our experience of incarnating, we would meet up. And when we would meet up, we would resolve each other and we would complete each other, like we were saying before, Beth, yes, about completing each other. And so this idea is very romantic. It's really great to hear this idea and to hope that there's another person who's just like me and is just going to balance me out as a masculine form of my feminine. But do you understand that if I have that belief system, what it does is it prevents me from stepping into the elements of my psyche that are masculine and accepting that aspect of me as a fully vital part of my experience. Because me being having a masculine traits and having this idea of a rationalized way of being, totally unrealistic. It's totally unrealistic, Beth. It's this idea of that I can't step into a role. I can't be good with money. This is the traditional form for a lot of women. You know, I can't be good with money. I'm not good on my own. I can't live a life on my own. I really can't be independent. I do need someone to hold my hand. I do need someone who's going to, you know, fix my tire, and I'm going to need someone to change the light bulb. And this type of behavior really prevents you from learning new skills and new experiences. So why would you want that for yourself? Why would you put such a limitation on your aspect of being? I know the answer. The answer really is fear. It's fear and a belief that you need someone in this life. And the thing is that you are someone in this life. And once you just switch, they want you to switch the belief system that you are someone in this life, that you have fingers and toes and hands and muscles and a mouth and ears and eyes and a heart, a loving heart, just like everybody else. You are as an individual perfect exactly as you are. Absolutely, as you are. You do not need another human being to complete you, to balance you, and to make things easier for you. But we do, as loving, caring souls who have a physical body, and we are automatically separated from the oneness in our physical space, we do need to understand how to connect in with our spirit energy to merge with the spirit energy that is the oneness, so that we can accept ourselves, be ourselves, and attract into our lives loving and caring partners and loving and caring family members. And try it. Try the shift of belief. Try tutoring yourself through the belief system. It's not about, oh, I don't need anybody in my life. We need people. We need to interact with people, because otherwise we have no experience. Being a hermit in a cave only gets you so far. It's really important that we do nurture our relationships, because they are an opportunity for us to grow. But if you don't have two choices, you can either suck it up and try to work within the system that you have, or you can make the decision to exit the experience. And when I mean that, I actually mean leave the relationship, or I mean allow the relationship to just petter off and focus your attention on the things that work for you. If you're sitting back and going, okay, my life is not really where I want it to be, and all I can see is the devastation, and everything I've tried isn't working for me, maybe you've got to ask yourself, when I've tried to do something, when I've tried to do something in my favor, what have I done? Have I actually stepped towards the exact thing that I want? Or have I talked myself out of what it is that what I want is not valuable enough, and what I should do is something else, maybe something that someone else is doing in my life, and I'm going to do that because I want to belong to them. The challenge with that is that that's you living someone else's life. That's not you making valid choices for yourself. That's not you empowering your spirit. That's not you exploring yourself as a soul and getting to know yourself as a soul and getting to know the nature of being. And so if you're finding that money issues are coming into your field, if you're finding that you're just not around the people that you feel lovable around, then you've got to ask yourself the question, what next? Where do I go to next? Because there's answers there for you. But relying on someone to come and complete you is going to lead you back into devastation and to a depression of ego and to a suppression of self. You are here to embody the highest potential for you. And the highest potential for you is complete as you are. And when you do that, you also attract into your lives a complete human being who matches you energetically and gives you space to grow. So you have the freedom to be without being tethered in a relationship and tied down. But similarly, you can also be very strongly positioned to know that you have physical help in this life, not just the spirit help, but actual physical help in this life. So this idea of twin flames, the evolution that a lot of practitioners have talked about, is they talk about how our soul, the accumulation of our soul's experience, because we've all had past lives here. There's very few energetic representations here who haven't had at least some incarnation experience, and that may not just be an incarnation as a physical human being, it might be as a plant or an animal. Because we progressively learn the nature of being as we incarnate. We never incarnate into a life that we cannot handle, into a life that we do not have some soul experience to. But the thing is, the sum of your soul experience is so vast. If we were to have access to that full library of knowledge right here, right now, instantaneous on the dot, if I contained all of that in my brain would explode. I would go insane. And so there's some agreement that we have when we come down here where we forget elements of ourselves, and it is gifted to us piece by piece as we explore our own life. And as it's gifted piece by piece as we explore our own life, we discover more about ourselves. But while we're here in a physical body, and while we have a clean brain not to get convoluted by all of the past karmic experience that we've had, because we don't need all of it in this particular life. We don't need all of it right now. So trust in the fact that you're given exactly what you need right now, and they only open doorways, we only open doorways to the information relating to our own soul when we ask for it, and when we welcome it, and when we show the spirit world that we are doing something with the information that we're given. So if you have all this information about all the talents that you have and all of the things that you want for yourself and all of the people that you want to meet, but you're doing nothing about it, then you're going to experience suffering. You're going to experience withdrawal. You're going to experience that sensation of wanting to be a hermit and wanting to be on your own. And then when you're there, you're going to wonder why it is that you feel so lonely. So Spirit does want just to flag with you that today is really just about understanding a variety of different shapes and sizes. A soulmate and this is where they're asking me to share with you, I had this recall just this morning, just, you know, in the space between when you're asleep and when you wake up, there's kind of a window of opportunity for spirit to send you messages and information. And I really love it because I love to hang out in bed just as I start to wake up and wake up slowly. You know, when you wake up too fast and you have to jump out of bed, you forget all your memory, the memory of your dreams, and you forget everything that's come up. So I really like to linger, and quite often I'll set my alarm about half an hour before I really need to get up so that I have that opportunity to linger. And during that period of time, they recalled to me actually someone who I met in my workplace quite a few years back. It would have been a good 10 years ago that I met him at a workplace, and we would have worked at the same workplace for 2 years. And he was not in my work team, but we had a whole lot of cubicles, and he was just the other side of the cubicle. And I remember that I used to talk with the people I would work with, and occasionally he would pop over and we'd have a conversation. I remember that we would talk about music gigs because we both really love music, and he started to burn, this is back when we used to burn CDs, he would burn CDs for me and give me CDs of music that I really loved, because we'd talk about different things, and he'd say, listen to this, don't listen to this. Now, he was married, he had kids, there was no necessary romantic relationship there, but during that period of time I was having a really difficult time. I was quite lonely. I was surrounded by people like I always am, and there were a lot of people who we liked each other and we could talk, but I felt very lonely. And when he gave me this, it was almost like a kind of olive branch to say, actually I was thinking about you, and this came to mind and I thought you'd really like it. And so I'd go home and I'd play it, and as I would play it, I would, you know, kind of think about the dynamic of how nice it was that someone would give me something that was of value to me. And so doing this, of course, the reason why they gave me the recall this morning is that I realized that now, 10 years on, I still think about that. Every time one of those songs kind of comes up on shuffle, I actually think about him and how cool he was, and how I really liked kind of how relaxed we were, and how I felt really comfortable. And I asked for a little bit of recall as to why you brought that memory to me right now. And they showed me a past life that I had with this guy, where I was quite a wealthy, came from quite a wealthy family. I was a girl, and he used to own a sweet shop. Now, bear with me, this sounds really cool, and it's up to you whether you believe it or not. It is, of course, of value to me, and that's all that matters. But I was this little girl, and I used to go into his shop, and he used to just give me sweets. He used to give me sweets for free. And he used to do that because he would always do it with a twinkle in his eye, and I always felt like he would make me feel special. And I asked Spirit, okay, so why are you showing me this? And they showed me actually how he felt. Because when he was giving me the sweets, there was an element of him that was sitting there believing that firstly, he wanted to make me smile. He just wanted to make me smile. And when I smiled for him when I was a young girl, it made him really happy. So he just gave these free sweets to me because it made him really happy. But also because he had a wife who was not very happy, and he was always very sad about her, and he didn't know how to help her. And he felt like he just needed to bring a little bit of sunshine into his life, and if he did that, he could do that for her. So when he gave me the sweets and I would smile at him and that would lift him up, he would then go home and he would then feel better, and that would allow him to make his wife feel better. And the question I asked my spirit team then was, does that make him a soul mate of mine? And spirit said, of course, because while that interaction was relatively simple and not particularly profound, the interaction was so meaningful, the consequence of that interaction was so meaningful that makes you soulmates, and you did have a soul contract in that life, including in this. And in this life, the reason why we had that echo of thought together, and the reason why we had that very brief experience together, was really just to lighten me up at the time. And in many ways, he was repaying the debt of what I gave him. And this is really the message I'm going to leave you. Spirit's saying that it's time to start to wrap up now. So I really do thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Beth, so much for commenting. It really does make my job a hell of a lot easier. Just remembering, of course, that the reason why I'm doing these videos is because we do just want to expand a little bit more conversation around past lives. We want to make it accessible to you. We want to allow you to experience your own recall. Spirit, of course, is just reminding you that quite often we get this information in that twilight period between sleeping and awaking. Our brain is perfect for receiving information and for downloading information from our highest aspect of soul. So don't be afraid to write down what it is that you get from Spirit. It's really quite important that we build that and see that as a tool that we have in our toolbox to help us have a happy, joyous life, because we are here to have that. We 100% are here to have that. So thank you so much for tuning in. Really Awesome. Thank you, Beth. I'm really glad to hear that. Thank you so much for tuning in. And I look forward to doing this again, same time next week. So if you get the opportunity, that will be 12:30 p.m. Melbourne time next Thursday. We're going to do this. So, of course, do feel free to tell people about this group. This is an open forum for people to join. We just wanted to make it really specific to past life, to reincarnation, and to the regression space too, and the between life space. Thank you, Spirit is reminding me we'll be talking about the between life space as well, which also will help to answer some of your questions about why we die and what happens when we die, and why we reincarnate and those types of questions. I know a lot of you have curiosities around that, and quite often if you have a fear of dying, if you have a fear of death, then you really feel like maybe this is it for you, then you can spend your whole life in a lot of fear. And fear doesn't help you. It doesn't help the planet, the planetary grid of energy. So we really do want to help you guys to disarm the fear in your life and start to live a more empowered experience as a soul. So my love to all of you. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll do this again soon. Okay, have a great day.